this point, let's talk about typography, which is going to be a fundamental element within the client-first system. So first of all, we're going to discuss the headings, since these are going to be the color pillar of your website in terms of typography. So first of all, we're going to notice that although we do have the basic global style already, we are actually going to have some heading classes which are going to essentially help us whenever we need to override the H1. So even if we look at the original version, you can see that over here under the headings, we have the H1, which again, it's just the classic H1 with no tag. And right below that, we have this variation, which has the class applied heading style H1. Now, in this example, you can see that they note use the correct HTML heading tag based on the headings hierarchy on the page. Use heading style classes. So basically these ones right here. Only to override the default heading tag style. So if the H1 on the page should be styled like an H1, don't apply any class to it. So if you just need the H1 as it is, just use the H1 with no global styles and or actually with no applied styles. And if the H1 should be styled like an H3, for example, you can use a heading style class. So for example, H1 heading style H3. So if I do just that by selecting the H1 and then I use heading style H3, you can see that we still have an H1. So like the core heading hasn't changed, but the styling applied is like the one of an H3. So this is going to be useful in some specific scenarios, and it's not going to be maybe something that you're going to use all of the time, but it's definitely something that gives you flexibility in your Webflow builds when it comes to headings, because sometimes you do want to keep the H1 at the very top of a page, and that is going to be the title, essentially the core title of the page. But maybe you don't want the visuals to be as big and prominent as the original H1. So that is a perfect case where you can utilize the heading styles. And the same is going to be true also for other headings. So I could actually have a H2 look like an H1, for example, or as an H4. So sky's the limit in terms of the interchangeability of this flow. Now, moving forward to the next step, which this one is actually basic SEO heading hierarchy. So you should always nest the H1s all the way to the H6 in a way that it creates a hierarchy. So in this case, we have H1, which is nested within an H2, which contains an H3, and the H3 contains an H4. Then we have another group of H2, but you can see how these are on the same line. Essentially, it's like two separate groups, and the H2 contains the H3. Now, what you don't want to do is to have, for example, an H1 that contains an H2, which contains an H4. Here we should have an H3 because it's just a natural consequence, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's not 1, 2, 4. Same is true also over here, H2, 5, and then we have this H3 below. So you need to keep this in mind. This is just basic SEO concepts, really. So that's that. And then moving forward, we have to talk about the text size classes. So as you can see over here, use the text size classes to change the size of a text element. So for example, over here we have a few different classes which we have by default in client first. They go from large, medium, regular, small, and tiny. The regular is essentially at 1 rem, so this shouldn't really change what you currently have. When it comes to the other ones, then we have increments of 1.25, 1.5 rem, and the small is 0.85 and 0.75 rem. So you can easily change the text style. For example, if I select this element and we currently have it at text size medium, but what if I write text size small? You can see how now it's applied 0.875 in this case. And if you go text size, oops, large, you can see how now we have it at 1.5 rem. So these are just handy classes that you can easily add in order to achieve the text size in a short amount of time, maintaining a level of consistency throughout the project. And the very next property is going to be the text color. Now, as you can see, we have three type of colors: primary, secondary, and neutral. Neutral is usually going to be something around the lines of gray or something that you set as a neutral color. Primary is going to be 000 by default, secondary FFF. Now, of course, you can change these based on the specific of your Webflow project, but if we have a look, text color, you can see how we can find these directly here. Now, this is set as the primary color, as you can see. But if you go ahead and then edit this value, you can actually basically change the variable. So we're going to go ahead and talk about variables later on, but that is essentially the link which is created and where you can easily change this option. Now moving forward to the next part, we have the text weight. These are really useful because they allow you to add different sizes of weight to your typography. So again, you're going to need to set this up based on the font family that you're using in your project. And it's also important to note that not each and every font family is going to have this many different weights. Most of the more flexible and comprehensive ones will, but you're going to need to keep this in mind. So if you want a lighter font weight, you're going to go with font weight light. And if you want something more bold, you're going to go towards these classes right here. So very fast, just to give you an idea, what we're gonna do is we're going to select here text weight. We're going to go with semi-bold. As you can see, these are going to be really easy to adjust and add. Now, the very next one is going to be text alignment, which again should be fairly straightforward. You can text align left, which is the default, text align center or right. So if I need to just add the text align center real quick, you can see how now I added this combo class in order to achieve just that result. So fairly straightforward. The very next one is going to be the text utility classes. Now, these are going to be more specific, and these are utility classes to help maintain the global system in on point for the project. So, for example, when you need to truncate the text into 2 lines, 3 lines, these are going to be the classes for you. If you need all caps, that's going to be the one that, and italic, strike through, muted, which is simply puts the opacity at 70% essentially. So these are going to be very handy at times. You need a quick class to make it all caps. You have it, and yeah, it's just going to be something that you want to keep in mind. You're not going to use them all the time, but just a nice have in your options on the table. And Also, one note, stack typography classes. You can create unique yet global combinations of typography styles. Just in this case, we have the text color, which is set as blue, with a semi-bold weight of the font family. And also one thing which is quite important, avoid stacking non-typography classes with typography classes. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. And I would add, do not add too many of these typography classes into stacks because it's really easy to start actually going ahead and adding a class for size, color, weight, maybe even alignment. But at that point, you're going to have to make a decision as to what is going to be the best way to go after this. And can I create simply a class that kind of like reunites all of this? Or maybe I change a basic heading or paragraph style, or I create a unique one. So you can always add on top of what is already here. Like for example, we have paragraphs. Nothing wrong with creating more paragraph styles if the project needs that, and it's going to be something that is going to be beneficial for you. And moving forward, custom typography classes. So create a custom class if the typography instance is very unique, requires deep stacking, or is better managed outside of the utility system. So exactly what I just mentioned. I didn't even realize there was a section dedicated to it. So yeah, that's exactly what we just mentioned. And there is this nice feature. So you can merge classes to a custom class by utilizing the Theme Suite extension to merge classes. So definitely something to keep in mind with their Chrome extension. And overall, avoid creating too many custom classes for typography. However, it is allowed to improve maintainability of the project. Example of custom classes: footer, copyright text, footer link, hero subtitle, theme, user description. So that's exactly what I was referring to. You can, whenever you start finding yourself having two or more classes, especially when you get to the point of three, I would say definitely keep this in mind. So we're going to continue with the very next